One topic that I love bringing up and talking about here on the channel on a somewhat regular basis is buyer's remorse. And the reason I bring this up, guys, is not maybe what you think. It's not that I like making fun of people that made poor decisions, or, I get pleasure out of, people's misery or anything like that. What it actually is, buyer's remorse stories are fantastic learning opportunities for everybody looking to buy a house, okay? And doesn't matter if you're a first-time home buyer or this is your third house you've ever bought. Doesn't really matter, because anybody can be affected with buyer's remorse if the conditions are right. One thing that I love doing in life in general is learning from other people's mistakes. And what better way to learn than from buyer's remorse stories on what not to do, okay? Now this one that I have today is quite interesting because it's from a guy that bought a Victorian style home, and we'll get to another one later in the video, but that's kind of an unusual purchase. Most people don't buy Victorian style homes. And on top of it being a Victorian home, it was also a flip. So an investor bought this property, tried to, restore it back to its original glory, so to speak. And, they turned it around for a profit, and this guy bought it. And he has a lot of mistakes that he made along the way that he wants to share with you guys. That way, you don't make the same mistakes. Now, one thing I vowed to myself when it comes to investing in real estate is I will never buy another old house again, meaning an old house that's 80 to 100 years old. Forget it. There's just too many problems that come up. There's a lot of deferred maintenance that you can't see. Some things can be even in original condition, guys, that you just aren't aware of because you're not looking at it. And that's the first major mistake that this guy made, which was when it came to his inspector. So he had an inspector look at the place like you're supposed to, but apparently this guy overlooked a lot of important things. Like, for example, he missed the fact that the plumbing was not up to code. He missed the fact that the HVAC system was too small for the property. And anytime you got to fix something like a plumbing issue, when it comes to bringing things up to code, that can cost a ton of money, guys. So right there, that was a big mistake. And he's telling people, make sure you get a good inspector, guys, especially if you're buying an old property like this. Even try to find one that specializes in these old properties, because they can just overlook so many things that they're not familiar with a 100-year-old house, for example.
I can't believe it. It's not a flip. This house is actually a rental property. They rented it last in 2020 for $98.50 a month. Fast forward to today, they have it for sale at $3,995,000. They were originally asking $4.2 million, so they've already cut $205,000 off the asking price.
Now, the next big mistake that this guy made that can be applied to anyone buying any type of flip property is he says that he wishes he would have gotten a list of all the repairs and renovations that were made to the property directly from the home flipper in order to basically verify what was done to the place. Because otherwise, you really have no idea if they just kind of patch things up and try to make things look cosmetically good, but yet behind the walls there's all kinds of wiring and plumbing issues that your inspector did not find, like we just talked about, and now you as the new owner are stuck with the repair bill. And this guy's really saying to go deep. And honestly, I feel like if you really start asking these kind of questions, in my experience as a real estate agent, the listing agent will stop picking up the phone. But hey, it doesn't hurt to try, because a lot of money's on the line when you're buying any one of these properties, right? But he's saying to ask things like, what was done to the structure during the renovation? Did you guys replace the wiring, the plumbing? How was the insulation upgraded? Were there any insect or fire damages found on the property? Now, chances are the listing agent isn't going to know this stuff, and they will need to get this information directly from the seller. But if the seller's unwilling to give it, then that's a pretty good sign that you probably just want to move on, because chances are they don't even have a list themselves, so they don't even know what was done. They just had a bunch of subcontractors in there just kind of doing whatever and fixing the place up just good enough to get it sold. And that's not a type of flip that you guys want to buy. But at the same time, it shouldn't be hard for the flipper to put into writing, at least a comprehensive list of the different things that they did to the property in order to give you an idea of what was done and what wasn't. And the next thing that he wishes he would have done that's kind of related to this was to pull the building permits on the property to see if that matches up with the work that they said that they did. because you can pull the permits and find out that, hey, this guy did a lot more to the property than the permits say, which means you have a lot of unpermitted work. Or for example, they can say a lot of things that were done, but they are not showing up on the permit. So it either means that it was done unpermitted, or it means that they didn't actually do it. Now the next tip might be a tough one to do, but it's worth giving a shot, just like everything else here. And that is seeing if you can find out any information on prior flips that this home flipper did. Ask their listing agent, because a lot of times they'll use the same realtor to see what happened with these previous properties. Are the current buyers happy? Different things like that. It's probably going to be difficult to get the truth out of the listing agent with those type of things, but at least you could do your own due diligence. If you know a few other properties that this person bought and flipped, maybe you can go talk to the current owners and see if they're happy with the place. I know a lot of this sounds kind of drastic, and honestly it kind of is, guys, but it really depends on how much of a chance you're really willing to take when you're buying one of these flips. Now personally, I don't know if I'd ever want to buy a flip, because there's too many things that it seem like can go wrong with this, and at the end of the day, you just don't know if you're being lied to, how well the work was completed, and I would kind of rather buy something and fix it up myself, at least be able to supervise what's happening and see the work in real time. That way you know exactly what's being done and how well it was done, from the get-go, versus taking someone else's word for it. But that's just me. If you go back to like the middle of 2022 and before that, all these big companies that forecast the economy and the housing market were all saying just how well things are going to go. We're going to avoid the recession. The housing market's going to go up in 2023, just at a slower pace, right? It's going to go up slower than it's been going up these past couple of years. But yet, what's interesting now is all these companies that predicted that are changing their prediction. Why is that, guys? Why do you think they're changing their prediction? You think maybe they're just dumb? Don't know what's going on? Do you think maybe they just don't want to see what's going on? Either way, it's not really good for you or me, especially if you listen to these people and take what they say at face value. For example, Goldman Sachs has drastically changed their 2023 housing market outlook. And this is what happened, guys. Before, they were saying that the housing market's going to go down by 4.1% in 2023. Well, now they just revised that, saying it's going to go down by 6.1%. And first of all, this is still a joke, if you ask me, because they're going by the CaseShiller price index, and this to me is the most lagging data that's out there when it comes to the price of real estate. And because it's lagging so badly, it's really hard to tell where things are when you look at this. Because if you look at their data, it shows that home prices are only down by 2.4%. That's it. But if you go look at Redfin's data on a national scale, because they update it every single week, home prices are down by 10%, okay? So that's a pretty big difference. So I would not be looking at the CaseShiller home price index to get a grip on what's happening right now. It's good looking into the past, but it's not so great looking at how things are going this week or this month. And so basically, Goldman Sachs has revised their prediction to say, yeah, home prices are going to go down probably 10% throughout 2023. Like, really? You think that's it? Just 10%, guys? It's already down by 10%. You can't be listening to people like this is really the moral of the story here, because things are going down a lot faster than all these big professional companies are really predicting that they would. And you really got to stay more on top of the real-time data, guys, instead of these lagging indicators that take months to catch up. And the thing that really drives me crazy is all these guys keep repeating the same nonsense. It always comes back to the same stupid argument. Oh, the mortgages that were given were good. People were way more qualified than they were during the last housing crash. All of that. You keep hearing the same thing over and over and over again from these people. And here's the thing, guys. That doesn't matter. Why does it not matter? Because we have so many other problems that we're dealing with right now that will affect the housing market, guaranteed. Just to name a few: high interest rates, unemployment going up, the looming recession, if you don't want to say that we're already in the recession. These things alone are going to have massive impacts on the housing market and how far things might come down. And this is what I keep trying to repeat to everybody on the channel, is just look at, if you look at Redfin's data, because it is more up to date and things have already gone down by 10%, and we haven't even seen widespread unemployment. We haven't even seen prolonged period of time with high interest rates. We haven't even seen the official recession yet, because when we do, that's going to be marked by the Fed reversing their policy and starting to lower interest rates. So we haven't seen any of this stuff yet, and yet prices are already falling. So imagine what things are going to look like when all these things actually happen. You can guarantee it's going to cause prices to come down even more. And we're not even getting into other factors that will increase housing inventory, like new construction and baby boomers that have all of their wealth tied up in their homes, putting their properties for sale, cashing out while they still can, buyer's remorse people trying to sell because they made big mistakes. All kinds of things like this are yet to come. And this is another big factor of why it takes the housing market so long to correct. We're looking at multiple years before things really improve, because all these things take a long time to play out. Now, speaking of buyer's remorse, I have another one for you. There's a story of a young woman, 34 years old, in Richmond, Virginia, and she bought a house for $585,000. She paid $35,000 over asking price. And on top of that, she got a 6.99% interest rate, which is higher than what they are right now. So this girl got completely screwed from both sides of the story here. She got a higher interest rate than most people are getting at the moment, and she fell into the trap of overbidding on the property. And it's to the point where she hasn't even moved into this place yet, and she's already regretting her purchase. Just unbelievable that someone would go to such lengths to purchase a property and then immediately hate the place before they even move in. And I think what happens to a lot of people is they just get caught up in the FOMO, like we talk about all the time here. They have this mentality that if I don't get a house now, I'll never be able to get one, which is just not true. But somehow people convince themselves that this is the case. And now she's saying things like, I did the dumbest thing possible, buying at the peak of the market and at the peak of the interest rate. So she just is getting creamed with this. And I'm willing to bet that she probably already has negative equity in the property. It doesn't say how much of a down payment she put down, but if it wasn't 20%, she's probably already underwater on this place on top of all that, guys. So this is basically worst case scenario for anybody buying a home right now. And her initial reason for looking at buying a property was because of this. She was renting, she was paying $2,500 a month in rent, and then the landlord said, hey, I'm gonna raise the rent by $500. Now that is quite the steep increase, guys, and usually an increase that much, that fast is pretty much unwarranted. I know expenses go up for landlords. I'm a landlord, I get it, but usually they don't go up that much that fast unless you own a condo in Miami. So her thinking was, well, if I can find a house that I can buy that pretty much equals or is close to what my new rent payment's going to be, which is $3,000 a month, then I might as well buy instead of own, which is perfectly fine logic. Nothing wrong with that. But where she went wrong is she was not able to find that deal, okay? She wasn't able to find the property that met the $3,000 a month budget that she wanted to stick to. And I think this is a big part of the reason why she has such strong buyer's remorse, because guess what? Now her total monthly payment is $3,900 a month. So $900 more than she would have been paying in rent. And for a single person to absorb that $900 a month, guys, that's over 10 grand a year extra, okay? So that is a significant amount of money that she's gonna have to cough up every year because she owns this house. But she's saying that she's super upset with herself. She wishes she didn't buy the house, and she's already saying she can't wait until she sells the place. So that's why I bring up these stories, because I really don't want you guys to fall into the same trap. And I also just want to clear the air on something too, that, sometimes people think that I'm saying, oh, nobody should be buying right now. Well, not nobody. There's always going to be somebody who should be buying right now, but you're going to have to determine if it's the right time for you. Overall, this is not a great time to be buying in this market as prices are starting to come down and the future of the recession is basically unknown at this point. And that includes your job security, which can make it very scary to be buying right now. And also, my opinion is that in an environment where rents are coming down like this, why not just wait this out a little bit longer, get a cheaper rental when your lease is up and wait this out another year and see where things go. But if that's not you and you have your heart set on buying for whatever reason, or you just convince yourself that you need to buy because of whatever reason, then that's why, to me, it's important to hear these stories in order to make sure you don't fall into these same traps, because you can avoid saving yourself a ton of headaches and a ton of money by just not being one of these buyer's remorse people. And something that's kind of related to buyer's remorse is college remorse, meaning like a bunch of people who go to college and they get a degree that basically ends up being worthless, that they graduate from school, they're not able to end up landing the job that they thought they were going to be able to get from their degree, and then they just end up working at Starbucks or Walmart just like everybody else because, the job that they thought they were going to get isn't available, whatever. Well, turns out there's a pretty easy way to avoid all this, at least if you didn't already get a degree. So just like we're talking about trying to help people avoid buyer's remorse, this is a little tip for all of you would-be college students that haven't gone to college yet but are thinking about it and have your eye on some sort of degree. There is a list, which I'm going to have linked in the description below for all of you to take a look at, of jobs that not only are basically recession-proof but are in industries that are growing, that you can basically be guaranteed that once you get your degree for this job, there's going to be an opportunity waiting for you, versus the unknown of just getting some whatever degree and you have no idea if you're going to be able to get a job or not. Because to me, I never went to college, guys, but if I did go to college, that was always one of my biggest concerns of what if I go, I'm not happy with the decision that I'm making here. I'm not happy with this career choice once you're already, too deep into it. That can be a big remorseful thing as well. So I'm not going to read them all to you, but I'll put up the list here on the screen so you guys can see. There's things like physical therapist, veterinarian, orthodontist, dentist, respiratory therapist, web developer, school psychologist, registered nurse, nurse practitioner, just to name a few. But to me, the biggest scam with all of this is the fact that basically all these jobs on this list do require some sort of degree. I don't care if it's a 2-year degree, 4-year degree, 8 years, whatever it is. But to me, this is the biggest scam in modern history when it comes to getting a job. Because you have companies right now that are so desperate for help, they're waiving the requirement of the actual college degree that the job would normally require because they're so desperate to get people. And to me, that first of all, it rips off the people who already have the degree and had to go through the college and pay for all of that. All right, just like the people that bought the Tesla for 20 grand more than what they're selling them for now. The reality is, guys, I feel like almost anything that we do, no matter what kind of job it is, can be taught. You can learn how to do different jobs hands-on. Like, I don't know about you guys, but for me, my preferred way to learn anything is to literally stand side by somebody watching them. Just like when I learned how to play guitar, I learned how to play with a real guitar teacher, a real person in front of me showing me what to do, versus trying to learn on my own online, which would be more difficult, right? Nothing can really replace hands-on experience, and I think a lot of these jobs can probably be learned with hands-on experience. And I'm not saying you don't need any type of formal education with these things, especially if you're in the medical industry. There's just things that obviously you need to know in order so you don't kill somebody by mistake, right? But other than that, the day-to-day activities that you do with the job, I think all of that should be taught in person. And people just waste too much time and money in school and not really learning how to do the real thing. It was the same thing with real estate. Like, you can't legally be a real estate agent unless you get your real estate license and go through school. The interesting thing was, when I went through the school, you learn all this stuff that seems to be like kind of crazy. Like, am I going to need to know all of this? And then when it turns out, when you actually get your license and go to start working as an agent, you don't use like any of it, guys. And I'm not even exaggerating here. Basically, all of it was useless. Pretty much what they teach you when you're learning to become a real estate agent is how to stay out of jail, because you learn things like the law and different math equations and things like this that you have to remember in order to pass the test. But in reality, when it comes down to being a real estate agent out in the real world, the real skills that you need are things like knowing your neighborhood and how much the valuations go for in the area, knowing how to properly write a real estate contract, which they don't teach you in school, learning how to read people and see if they're for real or what their intentions are. Listening is a powerful skill in real estate when you're learning how to work with people and figure out what they want and give them what they want. And so all these things they don't teach you in school. So my point is here that yes, if you're going to go to college, make sure you get a degree in something that's actually going to be worth something in the end. But at the same time, it's kind of BS that people even need to go to college for half of this stuff, or at the very least, a lot of this stuff could probably be cut down to like 6 months to a year of school. All the rest of it can be added up to just learning things in person, hands-on, apprentice style, because nothing is going to be a replacement for that. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you click the bell notification down below. YouTube will alert you every time I post a new video. If you don't want to wait, check out my next one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.